Welcome to Voicing Your Brand. I'm your host, Tammy Romani, and as a voiceover talent for more than 30 years, I've been a voice for many brands. But in today's digital marketing world, you've got to have your own voice for business. So now my mission is to help you learn how to use your voice for success by unlocking your authentic voice to tell your story and be heard. Are you ready? Welcome to the studio. Hey there, welcome to episode number 3 of Voicing Your Brand, where we will talk about all things business, branding, and using your voice for success. Today, in episode 3, more about why your voice matters. Apparently, it's science. So a few years ago, when I was leaving my job at a university to go full-time into voiceover, I was given the task of helping to interview my replacement. We had several applications come in, and once we reviewed those and chose the top candidates, then it was time to continue the process with a telephone interview. That's right. We had nothing to go on but the job application, a resume, and the person's voice. And let me tell you, that was quite an experience. As my manager and I started this process, we were absolutely floored by the number of applicants we disqualified because they either couldn't put a cohesive sentence together, or they mumbled, or they talked too fast so that we couldn't hear their very important words. Sometimes they just sounded like they didn't really want the job. This process of a telephone interview is often the first hurdle to overcome when you are interviewing for a highly prized position in a company. It's something you've got to nail down. So I'm just going to come out and say it. You are being judged for your voice. Okay. There have been voice coaches since probably the beginning of modern business. Vocal coaches to help you with speech, singing, breathing, vocal health, and so on. So there has been this need to help people have a better voice, especially for business, for a very long time. I mean, have you seen Singing in the Rain? The whole premise of that movie was that it was difficult for some actors and actresses to make the transition from silent films to talkies because their voices were hard to listen to. Somehow, we just knew, even then, that if we improved certain things about our voice and our speech, we would be better heard. Now, we've all heard that it takes 7 seconds to make a good first impression. Okay, that may be true about your appearance and your mannerisms and the way you just come across visually. But when it comes to your voice, that time shrinks down to about 1 second. Yeah, you're being judged. I've always assumed that appearance played the biggest role in how people form opinions about us, but according to recent research from the University of Glasgow, our brains make strong and unconscious judgments about people based on the way they speak. Now, I'm a researcher at heart, so reading this information was like music to my ears. So, if you'll indulge me, let me nerd out on this with you for just a minute or two. Picture this. University of Glasgow in Scotland. They've brought in 64 people, both men and women, and they recorded them in a recording studio reading a paragraph that happened to contain the word hello. Then each recording was edited so that they extracted just that one word, hello. Then they had another 320 participants listen to those hellos and match them with a personality trait, such as trustworthiness, aggressiveness, confidence, dominance, warmth, and so on. I think there were maybe 10 choices altogether. What the researchers found was that the participants largely agreed on which voice matched which personality trait. One male voice was overwhelmingly voted the least trustworthy. The pitch of that untrustworthy voice was much lower than the male deemed most trustworthy. Keep in mind here that it didn't matter if it was true about this participant, But just by his voice alone, people judged him as not being trustworthy. Now the speculation on that is it's probably because a higher-pitched male voice is closer to the natural pitch of a female, making the men sound less aggressive and friendlier than the lower male voices. Another interesting finding is what makes female voices sound more trustworthy is whether their voice rise or fall at the end of the word. Probably the trustworthy female, when she drops her voice at the end, is showing a degree of certainty and so can be trusted. Keep in mind, again, that it didn't matter if the assessment of the person based on their voice was actually true. What mattered is that the results were consistent and that the person was perceived to have a certain personality trait just by one word. Hello. There's a famous line from the movie Jerry Maguire, "You had me at hello." Seriously, those songwriters were onto something back then. In fact, this phenomena has been called the Jerry Maguire effect for just that reason. Now the data from that study is being further dissected by other universities to find out exactly what makes up the sound of being trustworthy. That should be interesting. And there are some other studies, including one at Yale University, which showed that it's easier for people to comprehend emotions from a voice alone rather than watching a video where they can see facial expressions and body language. But we are not going to overthink this. Your voice is part of your genetic makeup, your blueprint. In many cases, it is what it is. But just as you can do exercises to enhance your physical appearance, you can do the same to enhance your voice. And there's no heavy lifting required. Now, I do realize that this new information might just terrify you, or it might make you very happy. Maybe you've been wondering why your message isn't being heard. Maybe this is the first time you've ever thought about how your voice might be holding you back. From that promotion, from building your audience on social media, even from being heard by your kids or at your job. We will get into the topic of self-assessment in a future episode, but for now, it's so important to be aware of what people might be assuming about you based on hearing your voice. Your voice sets up expectations for how you're going to behave, how funny you are, how high your energy is, and even how accessible or believable you are. This mental image making is based solely on the sound of your voice and the energy you present. Wouldn't you like your message to be the most powerful it can be? So I'm going to give you a little challenge now and some homework. I want you to ask 3 or 4 friends or family members what they think when they hear your voice. Be sure to tell them to be honest and that you are on a journey to improve the way you communicate and that you are learning how to use your voice for success. I'd love to hear your responses. What do you think is the most important thing for you to work on? I'd really love to know because it will help me plan future episodes of this podcast. Would you send me an email at hello@tammyromani.com and let me know? Thanks. Anyway, this was a short one, but I wanted to get this information in your hands this very first week of the broadcast, and thank you so much for joining me today. Now that you know the science behind using your voice for success, isn't it going to be much easier to make yourself the guinea pig and experiment with your message and delivery? All the articles I've mentioned will be linked in the show notes. Just go to tammyromani.com/VYB003 and you'll see them. This has been fun. I'll catch you again next time. The Voicing Your Brand podcast has been brought to you today by the 7-Day Vocal Makeover. You know your voice needs help, but you don't know where to begin. In the 7-Day Vocal Makeover, I will walk you step by step through what you need to know to make the subtle changes necessary to be heard. This special edition of my program will be launching soon with a group coaching option where you'll have a safe place to practice and get input on the delivery of your important message. The waiting list is open now. Just go to tammyromani.com/makeover to get on that list.